This season of Crazy Sexy Food is sponsored by KJ's. KJ's is an independent, family-run business that has been making specialty sauces for professional chefs and home cooks like myself since 1985. KJ's first launched with its Goldfish brand curry sauce concentrates. More recently, they launched Taste KJ's of Suffolk. Inspired by travels to wonderful destinations around the world, these are 6 authentic, quick and easy cook-in sauces and 4 Asian-inspired squeezy sauces. My particular favourites are the Spanish tomato sauce with its added paprika, as well as the Thai po chili sauce to rev up my meals. Order my favourites as well as the whole collection from keejaysauces.co.uk. That's KEEJAYS sauces.co.uk. Hello and welcome to Crazy Sexy Food. I'm your host, Hannah Harley-Young. I'm interested not only in food, but the people behind the food and the stories behind the people. Each episode, I sit down and talk all things food with well-known personalities, industry insiders, and people who, well, just love their food. Today I'm joined by the man who makes the best pizza in America. Yep, you heard me right. Mark Iacono is the man, the myth, and the legend behind the infamous pizza joint in Brooklyn, New York, Lucali. I visited Lucali in 2018 after seeing Mark on Netflix's Ugly Delicious. I then did my research and saw that fellow Brit David Beckham was posting about him, and that was it. If there was one thing I did in New York, it was to go to Lucali. And my God, did my world change in that moment. As you all know, or should, I am the biggest pizza lover. Mark's laid-back Brooklyn swag is the epitome of cool. Although he accidentally got into pizza making, he has created the simplest menu. Pizza and calzone. He has no liquor license, so bring your own bottle or 2, and he takes no reservations. He has created an upmarket fancy restaurant disguised as a pizza joint. I told you he was legendary. And so it gives me the biggest pleasure to have him on today. Mark, thanks for joining me.
That intro gave me chills. Wow.
Well, then I've done my job.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
You're dialing in from New York. I kind of secretly wish I was there. New York is my favorite place in the world. How has the past few months been for you? It's been a bit crazy.
Crazy, yes. And I don't want to sound insensitive, to what's been going on, but as far as the business goes, it's been pretty well.
Well, everybody needs pizza in times of adversity.
Well, not only that, I mean, in the beginning, we were one of the very few restaurants that remained open. Everyone shut their doors. And we decided to stay open. Only because, what was going on here, like the long lines, the supermarkets, the shelves were empty. And, I stayed open because I thought people needed to eat. I just wanted to feed people. And it just wound up being super, like we had to add 25 hours to our work week. And then we even tried doing a community kitchen, like, where you can eat for free. It didn't, work well. No one, I mean, I guess the air, this neighborhood, didn't need it. We only had 2 people show up. So we just canceled it and went back to selling pizzas.
Yes. And, how is New York now? I mean, I don't want to get too political and sort of start going down a slippery slope.
Get political. Go for it.
Well, I mean, sure, fine. Okay, fuck it. Obviously you guys have a bit of a, not only are you guys dealing with COVID, you're also dealing with, a huge election coming up. There's a lot going on.
Yes, there is.
And, how are you kind of like dealing with all of that? Because I kind of feel like with New York, I don't know if you know, but I used to live in New York in my 20s. And I feel like New York is like a little microcosm of America. It's its own little entity.
Yes.
And there's a lot of madness going on.
As far as me, I'm just rolling with the punches, and trying to feed people. It's kind of sad what's going on right now. like what it's turned into. It's become this, you know, thing of unproductive arguing. And it's, people have forgotten how to speak to each other. Not only that, I've noticed that our sources of information are no longer reliable. Both sides have an agenda, and I see it creating more of a divide, which isn't good. And hopefully we'll just get through it. People are really emotional right now, and I think they need to put their emotions in their pocket and start making smart decisions.
God willing. I'm going to flip it completely. I want to ask you, what did you have for breakfast today?
I didn't. Cigarette and a Coke.
Like a true New Yorker.
Yep. I mean, I believe it or not, these last 2 months I've been eating like once a day.
Really?
Yeah, I've been on this crazy diet. I lost 25 pounds.
Why are you on a diet?
I just needed to lose weight and get healthy.
So what was your diet? Cigarettes and coffee?
For breakfast, yeah. And then dinner at night.
I have to say, the cigarette and coffee diet actually does work. But please, kids, do not follow that.
Gyms have been closed and you really can't be very active right now. So I went on a diet.
So I just want to take it a little bit back to your childhood. You're born and raised in Brooklyn. You still are in Brooklyn. I feel like you are the sort of the unofficial president of Brooklyn by the looks of things. He's the mayor of Henry Street. Talk to me about your childhood. What was life like growing up? What were you eating? Who was cooking? I have read that, your grandmother was a huge influence for you. So give me the picture.
Growing up in this part of Brooklyn in the 70s, early 80s, I mean, my child was amazing. For me, it was just like one big adventure. I was looking for adventure after adventure after adventure, and I remember it going from, all right, don't leave the front of the house. All right, so you're allowed down the block. And then it's like, all right, I was allowed to cross the street. And, and it just kept, and the more it was just like, and it just kept going and going and going, But it was an amazing place to grow up. It was believe it or not, it was a very blue-collar neighborhood, middle to lower income. As far as opportunities, it was basically like, everyone wanted to be a professional athlete. It was a very sports-oriented neighborhood, believe it or not. And then there was, the other path you could take. And those were pretty much your choices. And if you didn't make it out as an athlete, which I don't think anyone did, and then you would become either a fireman, a sanitation, you took the police test, all the city jobs.
And talk to me about the food. So like who was the primary cook in your household?
That was my grandmother.
Okay. So were you living with your grandparents?
Yes. Well, just my grandmother. We lived in a four-family brownstone. She lived beneath us, and she did all the cooking. My mom went out to work. My dad passed. I was at the age of 10. I was 10 years old. So my mom went out to work. She had 4 boys, and my grandmother ran the roost.
And what was she cooking?
Believe it or not, she really didn't have she didn't cook a lot of things. It wasn't very broad, but what she did cook was phenomenal. The few things that she did cook. You got to remember, the way it worked, my grandfather was a jeweler. And, my grandmother was a beautician. But she worked out of the house. So it was like all the Italian ladies would come during the day and she would do their hair and she'd be cooking for her family at the time, before I was even born. And, so you have all these old Italian ladies in her house sharing recipes with her, and she became a great cook.
So give me some of the examples of the dishes that you'd be having. Like, was it all Italian food? Like, what was like a standard meal for you guys?
Italian, American. I mean, listen, I'll just cut right to the chase. It was all about the Sunday sauce. Whole family, the table was 30 people sitting at the table every single Sunday. I remember, me at the age of 40, I can count the number of Sundays through my whole life, and it was maybe 5. I mean, other than, if I was away on vacation, I don't count that. But every Sunday, me, my brothers, all of us, around, my aunts, my uncles, we were around that table.
I think it's so important to have like those big family
All the
meals.
way up until COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. So we haven't really, gotten together.
And when you were growing up and you're sort of like at that age where you're having all these family meals and your grandma's cooking and whatever you're getting up to as a kid, were you interested in food yourself? Like, did you have any aspirations to get into the food industry at all?
Yes, actually I did. Yes. What you have to remember, this was predominantly, this neighborhood. It was a very small neighborhood, predominantly all Italian. It was about 90% Italian. And, all the Italian restaurants, and the grocery stores, the butchers, whatever, you know, as far as the restaurants go, you got to remember, it's Italian restaurants cooking for Italian people. So we had some really, really good restaurants. But what I remember, and it sticks in my head, and it wasn't just me. It was even like my brothers and my cousins. We'd go out to dinner, right, to an Italian restaurant, and it was great. We enjoyed it, but I remember myself, not only myself and my cousins and my brothers, always saying, Grandma makes it so much better. If we were to open up a restaurant and serve Grandma's food, so much better. I remember like going to my favorite pizzeria, and I really, really enjoyed the pizza. But I always remember telling, I were to make this pizza, I would do it this way. I would just change this. It would taste so much better as a kid. And then one of my cousins opened up a pizzeria, and I used to go hang out there and, support. And if, they needed a hand, I would jump in, which they never did, so I never jumped in. But I remember one day asking if I could make a pizza. And they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I just got back there and I made the pizza. And I'll never forget it coming out of the oven. The guy working there pulled it out, and it's like, wow, what did you do to this? It tastes so much better. And, it was just a question of technique, and it was the first pizza I ever made.
And what had you done to the pizza?
I think it was just a ratio of ingredients, sauce to cheese. I just changed a little. And, and the cooking technique, kind of slow cooked it. And it was great. And then, like, I don't know, maybe 6 years later, whole thing just fell into my lap. I wound up opening up a pizzeria.
Lucali is in the location that used to be a candy store. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of saved it from being sold on to someone else. I guess you wanted to kind of do something with the space.
I didn't want anybody else to have the store. I loved it and I wanted it.
But when you saw it come up for sale, were you automatically like, no, I don't want anyone else to have this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I just want it to be mine?
It didn't come up for sale. Again, it was just luck. The place wasn't for sale. There was no, I didn't know. I went out for a cup of coffee. Let me rewind a little. Like, this is a place I grew up in. I remember my dad bringing me here as a kid, and throughout my adult life, I would come here, for cigarettes, papers, whatever. Louis, the owner, had passed away, and his wife and son were running it after that. And then I just remember driving by, a couple of times, and it was open, it was closed. It was open, it was closed. And, a Saturday afternoon, it was the weekend, I was off from work, and I go to the local coffee shop to get a cup of coffee, and I see Rosemary sitting in there with all her friends. And, when I asked, I was like, "Bro, what's going on with the store? Like, every time I go by, it's been closed a lot lately." And that's when she told me, she goes, "Mark, listen, we're closed. We're no longer opening it." I was like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah, we have some people coming to look at it." Another restaurateur that she had mentioned. And I was like, sorry to hear that, and then, and I went and I got my coffee. And on the way out, I waved goodbye to all of them, said goodbye to her and all the ladies. And I just stopped. Like, and it's not really me. I think it's rude, like, or it's impolite to ask. I'm not a squeaky wheel, right? But I just stopped. Like, I'll never, right in the doorway. And I turned around and I walked back up and I was like, bro, listen, if things don't work out Monday, let me know. I might be interested in the place. And she was like, okay. And I left. I went to my uncle's barbershop. I would always go visit him on Saturdays. And the phone rings. And, my aunt's like, Mark, this phone call for you. It's like, for me. And it was Rosemary's son, Anthony. And he was like, hey, Mark, it's me, Anthony, from the candy store. This is like a half hour later. And he was like, listen, we heard you were interested in the store. I was like, yeah. He goes, well, we would love to have you take it over. I was like, really? And they were like, yeah. It's like, all right, I'll be right there. Let's talk. And, a couple of days later, I'm signing a lease. I have $5,000 to my name. And now, here I am in Louis' candy store, only this time I'm on the other side of the counter. I'm in the back room that, I never saw. I didn't know. I knew there was a back room, but I didn't know what was behind that door.
You never had access until that point.
Coming in there for the first time and I'm looking around like, okay, what am I going to do with this space? I wanted, when I had first spoken to Rosemary and told her I really wanted it for my kid brother. He was a union carpenter, 4 kids, all under the age of 5, and I figured he could, it's a coffee shop, lotto machine, he could make some extra money. But then once I got in here and I don't know, it just, my wheels started turning. And then I just started tearing stuff out and thinking, I was going to do a diner, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to do a restaurant, and then pizza, it just hit me. And I decided to open up a pizzeria.
So you decide you want to do the pizza. How did you even know the first thing about, one, making pizza, running a restaurant, setting up a pizza oven? Because I need to tell you something. I think making pizza is actually quite difficult. I don't think it's actually a very easy thing.
It's not. And a pizza business, it's a very tough business, especially if you're successful. It's a lot of work, and a lot of people come to me, and I'm like, be careful what you wish for. And my first vacation when I opened was 6 years. I didn't have a day off for 6 years, and my first vacation was a hospital bed.
Oh, okay. We don't need to talk about that part of it.
I mean, you could. I mean, I talk about it.
I already have done my research. I know your story. Can I just ask one question though? Not to do with that, but when you were in hospital and you were in recovery, who took over? And who did you trust enough to take over?
Funny thing about that was, I was closing shop. Like, I refused to let anyone else make the pizza.
Oh my God, you were actually going to shut the place? Wow, okay.
Like, there was this outpour of support by the community and my customers. And, I had a great crew, both front and back. And my pizza guy, the guys that assisted me in making the pizza knew how to make pizza. And I remember I was going to close shop, and, my brother came to see me because, my family just jumped right in. My brother, I had a very young staff too. I hired a lot of young kids from the neighborhood. A lot of my friends' kids, I shouldn't call them kids, teenagers. And, my brother came to see me, and I told him, no, just keep it closed, and when I get better, we'll just hopefully it won't take long. And he was like, you can't do that. He goes, you can't do that to these kids. You can't put them out of work. He goes, just let them do it. And I let go. And they took over, and they did a phenomenal job.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, when I talk about the incident, people I was like, no, don't feel. I think more good than harm came to it.
No, totally. That's what I was actually just thinking when you were saying that. Just take me back to when you decided to create pizza, to build this restaurant. How did you know? What did you know about
Nothing.
Owning a restaurant? So were you literally just learning as you were building and as you were?
I was in the industry, in the construction industry for listen, I loved to build. Like, people thought I was weird and I was odd because at a very young age, I was doing like crazy things when it comes to to building stuff and being creative with stuff like that. And it was something I loved. I love to create things. I love to build. I love to design. I wanted to be an architect. It took me 2.5 years to build the space out. And that in itself was a labor of love. Finally, I was always building for other people, their designs, what they wanted. I was always in love with like the Art Deco era, or like, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and what came out of that, what came out of those eras. And that's what I wanted to create. And I wanted to show people that, you can, I was also in love with the techniques. Like there's no sheetrock, this is like original plaster work and tin work and carpentry. That in itself, it was a labor of love. Then I finished. And it took me 2.5 years to finish, and now I had to open, and now I had to teach myself how to make pizza. And there's someone, that in all the interviews and articles that I've done, no one, they get zero recognition. There was a pizzeria as I was opening up that was in the neighborhood. Neighborhood guy owned it. His name was Joe, and his son Lenny. And they had a pizzeria, Leonardo's. And as I was opening, they were closing. Everyone thinks I learned from Dom DeFara. It was actually Joe and his son Lenny that kind of like led me in the right direction, showed me the basics, and and then I put my twist on it. And I'll never forget, like, I was looking for a cheese vendor, and some guy came, and he's like, listen, we'll drop some cheeses off, you try them out. And, I was, I had to learn how to stretch. I didn't know how to stretch dough. I would go to the local pizzerias and just buy dough and just like learn how to stretch. And they happened to be here one day as I was in the process of practicing stretching. They showed up, and I was like, all right, let's make a pizza. And, they had these really expensive, fancy cheeses. I shouldn't say fancy, I just said high quality. And I'll never forget, we made the first pie, and we took it out of the oven, and, we tried it. And they looked at me, they're like, wow, this is amazing. I was like, really? And they were complimenting the cheeses, which were their cheeses. Of course, they're trying to sell the stuff, but the cheeses really did, the first shot, we nailed it. And I'm like, but damn, this cheese is so expensive. I'm like, I'm going to have to charge $22 for this pizza. And he was like, I definitely paid $22 for this pizza. And that was it. And we just, and I want to say, maybe, I practiced a little. I made a couple of more pizzas, and like, people were walking by, and I was like, hey, that I knew, old neighbors that were still left, try this out. It's like, wow, Mark, this is really good. I was like, okay, that's it. I have my pizza. I have my recipe. I did tweak it a little, after being open for a month or so, but that's just me. I'm constantly tweaking. And then came the calzone. Right before opening, I was, again, practicing on pizza, and Rosemary, the landlord, was sitting in here. They live upstate. Rosemary has now passed, but they live above the pizzeria. Anthony's still there.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I remember Rosemary was sitting at table 3. She would sit here with me as I would do my construction work sometimes, and and she's sitting at table 3, looking at the window with her back to me, and I'll never forget. She just turns her head and she goes, "Hey, are you gonna make calzones?" And I was like, "I don't know, I didn't even think of it." And I says, "Do you want one?" She goes, "I would love a calzone." I was like, "All right." So I made a calzone. I happened to have some, they brought me some samples of ricotta. Like I was going to throw that actually on pizza and practice making the white pie. And I made her a calzone. I throw it in the oven, and I just bring it over the table, put it in front of her, not thinking. And I went back to practicing making pizza. And a quarter of the way through, like, she just turned. I didn't even think to ask her how it was. She turns like with this, what I thought was a look of disgust. Like, "Did you taste this?" And I was like, "No, why? It's not good?" She goes, "This is incredible. It's the best calzone I've ever had." And and here's this like 75-year-old lady who kind of grew, the neighborhood was filled with these amazing pizzerias, and I was like, what do you mean? I was like, "Nah, I figured she was just saying that. And I was like, all right, I guess calzones are on the menu. So I did pizza and calzone.
And here we are. Talk to me about what the Lucali pizza is, because the majority of people who follow Crazy Sexy Food will know that I am like the biggest pizza fan of all time, and I eat a lot of it. I probably don't eat as much as you do, but what makes your pizzas so unique, so delicious? It's the simplicity. You don't try and be something that it's not. It's just very, very good produce, and it's fresh.
It's a number of things. It's ratio of cheeses.
What should be the cheese to sauce ratio? Or are you not going to tell me that?
And I've never measured it. I just it was my touch. The ratio. I don't know the ratio. Like if it's 3 to 1. I don't know. People always ask me, well, how much water? I don't know. I have a bucket with a line drawn on it. And they're like, what do you mean you don't weigh it? I was like, no. It's a bag of flour, a bucket of water, a half-inch slab of yeast, cup of salt, cup of oil. And that was it. And you just mix it all together. But everyone else has all these these crazy processes, whether it's a starter and no, I wasn't taught that way. And
do you know what I like about you? You're very old school.
I don't know if I'm old school.
No, I really think you are.
I just never got behind the science of it.
But that's what I quite like, because you're it's like people focus so much on that in this day and age, and food has become so fancy in a way. It's like you don't need, there's certain things you don't need to touch,
Yes, and I, from really keeping an eye on the industry and watching places open and close. They have a 2-year run. A lot of it is fueled by PR, but when people come to New York, they want a New York slice. They want a New York pizza. When you go to Chicago, I have to pause. Someone's crashing into my restaurant.
Oh my God. Someone's about to crash into his car.
Yo! I'm back. Can you hear me? All right, we're back.
We're back.
So where was I?
Well, no, we were just kind of talking about, and you're absolutely right. You touched on it about these places that sort of last 2 years, and then you kind of don't ever hear about them ever again, Yes.
Yes. They really get behind the science of the pizza, and they look for certain textures and flavors as far as the fermentation process goes. They don't focus on the pizza as a whole. They're mostly focusing on the dough and the crust. And once they achieve that, then their focus is on turning it into something that's totally untraditional to New York style pizza. It's like with all the, it's like creating a recipe and throwing it on top of this dough. And when I mean recipe, it's like, pancetta and Brussels sprouts.
Brussels sprouts.
Fennel, yeah, it's like, there's not even sauce or cheese on it. Don't get me wrong, some of these pizzas taste amazing, but it's not a traditional.
But then, is it actually pizza?
Well, listen, you know what? I don't care to argue. Call it whatever you want. The proof is in the pudding. When you come to New York, it's dough sauce. When you want to eat that pizza, it's dough sauce and cheese. All those pizzas, yes, they are pizzas. It's not New York style pizza.
I can't wait for you to come to London. There's so many pizza places that you need to try. But I want to take you to the places that I
want to open up in London.
Well, I would love for you to open up in London. I think that needs to happen. I want to take you to the places that I even think should be arrested, because I just want to show you what people try and sell as a pizza. And I'm not going to name names, because that's not what I'm about. But there are certain places that I just still can't believe are so popular, and they just, it's It's shocking.
What kind of pizza?
Well, it's kind of actually what you touched on. There's a lot of people that are focusing on the dough. And because it's been fermented for, 365 days or whatever, and it's this and it's that, and it's, it's practically got mold growing off it, that it makes it this profound pizza. It's not. And then you're trying to sell me a pizza about the same size as my face, and the topping, as in your sauce and your cheese, is as big as my eyeball. If I wanted a piece of bread, I'd ask for a piece of bread.
But that is a traditional Neapolitan pizza. That's what it is. A Neapolitan. It's not a New York style pizza.
I do like a Neapolitana pizza. I do. There's a couple places that I go to. My favourite pizza in London is a Neapolitana style. But they actually give you pizza, And then my other really favourite place, he's actually a guy that I really want to introduce you to because I know you guys would get on so well. He owns a really amazing chain of pizza joints in London who do the big New York style. They're actually 20-inch pies. You can buy them by the slice. Some of their toppings, okay, yeah, they're a little bit out there, but they do just a standard cheese and tomato pizza.
When done right, it's a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people are no longer doing it right. So to stay open, well, you see this with a lot of slice joints in New York. They're coming up with all these crazy toppings. There are a few pizzerias in New York that people walk into just to have a slice. There's this place a couple of blocks away, Viscotti's from me. And when you walk in there, no one's ordering toppings. Give me a slice. Give me a slice. I go to Luigi's. It's give me a slice. Give me a slice. No toppings. Doesn't need it.
Why do you not have a reservation policy?
Many reasons. Running a business is very difficult. Staying open and making money is very difficult. You need to produce. And if I were to do reservations, right, it would have to be this policy where you have to be out in 45 minutes. People aren't going to go for that.
No.
What was, again, like, a blessing and a curse. I built this beautiful pizzeria, from what I'm told. Everyone loves the dining room. If I was to do reservation, I'd do less tables.
Why?
It's just the way it is. It's like, the way it is, someone gets up, someone sits down. And
Right.
and between licensings and all these fees and all this stuff you have to deal with. Not only that, I would have to hire someone to start taking reservations. And, it's just more money out of pocket.
I also think as well, there's something...
But we do take reservations if you really think about it.
Let me just tell you something for a second. So when I knew that I wanted to come to you guys, I'd never even set foot anywhere near Carroll Gardens in my entire life. I feel like the whole experience is kind of what sets you guys apart. You come at 5 o'clock... no matter what the weather is, and we're not talking about New York weather now, but, you guys have some really fierce winters, and you put your name down, and I ended up in some dive bar around the corner drinking frozen margaritas. By the time I sat down to have my pizza, I was so drunk that actually it was a really good marketing ploy because you got me really pissed. And then what did I want? I needed pizza, right? And then I ended up ordering a calzone, and then I ordered so much stuff that night I couldn't eat it all.
But also, when you think about it, like, if we were to do reservations, the place wouldn't be accessible for those who really want it. People come, the line starts at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We open at 6. They're waiting online for 3 hours. Those are the people, I'd rather give that table to someone who really wants it than to someone who can just call in, let me try getting a reservation.
Yeah.
Those people really want it, and they deserve it.
Do you ever keep a couple tables aside just in case you've got a few, important friends or whatever coming?
Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and sit here and, but...
Wait, hold on a second, Mark. Can we just get something clear? Am I part of that list now?
We'll see.
Come on.
Yeah, you're part of the list. No, but listen, just like any restaurateur, I have friends, I have family. I'm not gonna, they need to call me in advance. They can't just show up. Like even my brother, you show up. No, that I don't have a table for you. But they know to call me in advance. Yeah.
What shouldn't be on a pizza? I know what my answer is.
Listen, if it tastes good, What's your answer?
I have a massive issue with pineapple.
Okay.
And that really, like, it stresses me out that that's become, like, the Hawaiian pizza is a real issue for me.
Um, I'm going to make I'm going to make you Hawaiian pizza. Listen, I serve what I consider the traditional New York toppings. That's what I put on my pizza. Am I against all these other toppings? No. A lot of people think I am, but no, I'm not against it. And I will try it. But, why complicate my business? Why have, 100 different toppings? The few toppings, like, when people ask, what do you recommend on the pizza? Nothing. What do you mean nothing? How could that, you've never had good pizza.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is that you don't need anything.
You never had good pizza.
I completely agree.
I call it a plain pie. It's not a margarita pie, so...
Okay, this is a big debate for me, and I don't know if it's such a big debate for Americans or New Yorkers. How do you eat a pizza slice?
Depends on the pizza.
Would you ever use a knife and fork?
If needed. I mean, there was one of my favorite pizzerias growing up was Sam's. It's still open today.
I've been to Sam's, I think.
But the pizza was a very soupy pizza. In the middle. It was a puddle pie in the middle, and it was phenomenal. So when you ate that slice, you needed to start with a knife and fork until you got like a third of the way through, and then you would fold it and eat it with your hands.
Okay. I've been told off before in the past for using a knife and fork.
Really?
Yeah, I've had people who I've been eating with tell me that I'm an amateur.
Listen, I really, I mean, it's a food that I enjoy eating with my hands.
But I think you're right, actually, depending on the consistency
and
of
it's
everything.
so good. Like, I just want to get it in my, I don't want to.
Yeah, I just want to get it in my mouth.
I just want to fold it and stuff it in my mouth. It's gluttonous food.
It's meant to be messy.
New York slice, you eat with your hands.
I don't know, there's this other thing that I tell you what I have a bit of an issue with. I don't really like folding the pizza. I kind of quite like having the whole thing there. Because I feel if I fold it, I'm kind of like losing out on half of it.
It's half as small. Okay.
And I love my pizza. So anyway, when you are at home, what are some of your specialities to cook?
Listen, all my cooking takes place in the restaurant. I really don't cook at home.
So do you eat pizza every day?
No. I'll cook here, like for myself. Well, no, I'm lying.
Oh, okay, fine.
I mean, it's very rare that I cook for myself. But, I mess around with a lot of things here. I want to open up a restaurant, an Italian restaurant. So, like, I'm always making things and having my friends try them out, customers try them out. I think, one of my special is the meatball.
I need to try it.
Yeah, people go bananas for it. They love it. I'll never say I have the best pizza, but I can pretty much say I probably have the best meatball.
Oh, wow. Okay. What are some of your favorite restaurants in New York, aside from your own, of course?
Red Hook Tavern, Lilia, Frankie's, Carbone, Beatrice Inn, Il Buco, Emilio Bellata, so many. Lola's, so many restaurants.
I've been to a few of those.
Yeah, so many great restaurants in New York.
Oh my God, I miss New York. Even just like,
there are so many restaurants that I haven't been to.
Yeah. Well, the restaurant scene in New York is crazy. I feel like I could never keep up with it.
No. And I don't know, as far as my dining experiences go, and it's not, I'm not someone who travels around the world, eating food. But just from what, listen, it's really big in my life. There are a lot of chefs in my life. And just, the industry itself. And it's, in New York, it's a really close, tight-knit industry. We all know each other. And we sit and we chat and we all eat in each other's restaurants. And I'm also in contact with a lot of people such as, like yourself, who you probably travel the world eating food. I think, it may be the mecca of restaurants.
I agree.
And not only that, I've noticed, when I go to a lot of these places and, these are the best restaurants and these are the best chefs, their restaurants wouldn't last a month in New York. I don't like talking like that, but listen, that's how I feel.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like New York is its own little entity.
Yeah. I mean, and I know it's not the birthplace of a lot of cuisine, but some of the best chefs are here. And if they're not from here, they're opening up here.
So, just to round up my interviews, I always ask a few really quick fire questions. One of my favorite snacks of all time is, well, in the UK we call it a packet of crisps, but over there it's a packet of chips. What is your favorite flavor of chips and why?
Garlic.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes, Wise potato chips, garlic flavored.
I've never heard of these before.
Oh, they're incredible. You never heard of Wise potato chips?
No.
Someone needs to send you a bag.
Oh my God. Okay. What they called Wise?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have a little Google. What is the craziest food you've ever eaten?
Vasted, which is spleen.
Where?
At this place, Francesco's.
Wow.
It's a focacceria. Yes, and I've been eating in this restaurant since I was a kid, since I was 10. And, there were only 3 things I've ever ordered from there. It's a Pinel special, which is a chickpea patty. It's a sandwich. Chickpea patties, ricotta, grated cheese on a roll. And then the same as a potato sandwich. Potatoes, believe it or not. It's potato croquettes, ricotta, grated cheese on a roll. And the rice bowl special. And like all the old school Italians, from the old timers, like they would, they're very, the vastet, the spleen sandwich, which is, spleen, ricotta, and grated cheese on a roll. And I was in there one day with Alan Richmond. We did like a food tour of the neighborhood, and I took him there to try the pineapple and potato sandwich. He goes, I've been hearing about this spleen sandwich on their menu. It's like, Alan, I've been eating here for about 40 years. I've never tried it. Nor have any desire to try it. But you know what? Let's do it. And don't get me wrong. I've been eating there 40 years. But the one thing on the menu that I never tried was this spleen sandwich. And as I was putting it to my mouth, I was spitting it out.
Oh, really? You just couldn't do it?
Yeah, that was tough to handle. Yeah, it was probably the spleen.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had that answer before. Okay. What has been your most memorable meal?
Wow, Christmas Eve dinner.
Is there a particular one, or is it Christmas Eve dinners are like your favorite?
My favorite.
What is your favorite meal, or your favorite food?
Big Mac.
Mark!
What?
Are you serious?
Dead. Billions and billions sold. You know why? Because it's really, really good.
I'm not even going to answer this. I mean, I get it from like a business point of view, but I'm not going to talk about flavor here.
Why not?
No. Do you know what? The last time I ate a Big Mac, I must have been about 12.
Really? Love it.
I must say, McDonald's do the best chips, fries.
Really, really good fries.
My final question is, live to eat or eat to live?
I really have to absorb that question because I don't understand it. Wait. At this stage of the game, I eat to live. I'm all about getting healthy right now. But actually, live to eat. So, now it's just one meal a day, but, a really good one. Like, I'll go in. One meal a day, I go in.
What are you going to eat today after this?
That's a good question. I haven't thought about it. After this, I don't know. I don't, because I have such a crazy day today.
Mark, thank you so much. We kind of battled through we battled through the Wi-Fi and the technology somewhat. You can follow Mark on social media at Lucali_BK.
Wait, we're done?
We're done!
I want to keep going.
Okay, we can keep going.
This is like the first time with an interview that I just wanted to keep going.
Let's keep going. What do you want to talk about? I mean, I have other questions, but there were other things I wanted to ask, but I just they were just a bit kind of like...
Boring?
Not boring, but just sort of...
How about you let me decide?
Okay, all right. Okay, he's in charge now. There is a question I could ask, and that's about some of your celebrity clientele.
What do you want to know?
In a way, you're kind of like a bit of a celebrity in like the Carroll Gardens area. But how did everyone come to start knowing about you? Like, how did Jay and Beyonce start knowing about you? How did you meet David Beckham? Like, you're this little local pizza joint. How did they start finding out?
Our celebrity list is off the charts.
It's ridiculous.
It is. Word of mouth. I'll never, like, when I first opened, I knew nothing about the restaurant industry, I didn't know about these blogs and these magazines like New York Magazine, Time Out, New York Eat, the New York Times every Wednesday. I knew nothing about that. I remember like my first New York, a friend of mine who was kind of like into all that stuff. I was like, yeah, someone from the New York Magazine called me for an interview, and he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I got a call from New York. He's like, do you know? I was like, no, how big of a deal? I don't read New York Magazine or the New York Times. Like, I didn't know the New York Times was the paper to be in. I read the Daily News, at the time of the New York Post, I'm very blue collar.
Yeah.
And, I'll never forget, I was open for maybe a week, and there was maybe only 4 tables in the restaurant. And, I would walk around and speak to customers, try to get feedback from them, because like I said, and I'll never forget, someone told me, you never made pizza before, you opened up a pizzeria. I was like, yeah, all right. He's like, well, you're not going to tell anybody that. I was like, what do you mean? Are you going to tell people? I was like, yeah, I'm not going to make believe like I know what I'm doing. I don't. So I go over to one table and I ask the guy, I says, oh, how's everything tonight? He's like, oh, pizza's really good. He goes, but do you have a hot spot in that oven? And I'm like, what? Like, I didn't even know what a hot spot was.
What is it? I never heard of it myself.
It's a spot in the oven that's hotter than the rest of the oven,
Okay.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And he shows me the bottom of his pizza, and half the pie is cooked perfect on the bottom, and the other side is burnt to a crisp. I didn't even know I had to look at the bottom of the pizza, Really. When I started making pizza, I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I says, let me make you a new pizza. He's like, no, that's all right. I was like, no, I insist. It's not a big deal. So I go back to the table, and he comes walking up to the table with a camera. He goes, do you mind if I take some pictures? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm like, why does this guy want to take pictures of me? I didn't know people did that in restaurants, This is when the whole food movement, was starting, and the whole, I knew nothing about the internet. I didn't even own a computer, I knew nothing about it. And, he starts taking pictures of me making pizza. I was like, why are you taking pictures? He goes, well, my name is Adam from Slice, New York. And I was like, okay, like, what the hell is Slice? It's a blog. I didn't know what a blog was. And there's another table sitting down up. She goes, we're Peter and so-and-so from Chowhound. And I'm like, Chowhound, Slice, New York. I had no clue what they were talking about. They're like, oh my God, we love your blog. And he's like, oh yeah, I read you guys on Chowhound. They're going back and forth. And, and that was it. Then, about a half hour goes by, and there's another table sitting in the corner. And, my waitress was busy with one table, and she was the only one working that night. So I finished the calzone, and she was busy, so I brought it over to the table. And when I brought it over to the table, she was like, you gave the calzone to the wrong table. So I go over, I apologize to the guy that didn't get the calzone, and I said, listen, my apologies. He's like, no, it's not a big deal, don't worry. So I go and I make his calzone, and I bring it to him. And he eats it, and, I ask him, how was everything? He said, oh, everything was great. He goes, listen, I have a food column. And now here I am thinking, like, yeah, you got a food column. You're probably just trying to get a free meal out of me. This is kind of some restaurant trick. Like you always see in movies or something?
Yeah, of course.
This is what I'm thinking. Yeah, you got a food column. I didn't even know they existed. And he's like, no, listen, I would really like to interview you tomorrow and this, that, the other thing. I was like, all right, here's my number. Give me a call tomorrow afternoon. And sure enough, 10 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call, and it's this guy interviewing me. And, at the end of the interview, I was like, oh, who do you write for? He goes, oh, I got a column with New York Magazine. I was like, oh, okay, great. Not realizing that was the magazine at the time that you wanted to be in.
And so do you feel like when that article came out, do you feel like there was like a real turnaround?
Oddly enough, when I opened, I remember, it took me 2.5 years to build the place out. I practiced 2 weeks on the pizza before I did. And I'm sitting here, I was like, all right, listen, I need to shit or get off the pot. I need to open. It's 2.5 years. I need to open it. And I was like, I still had the paper on the window so no one could see in. And I'll never forget, I took the paper down, and I called up my landlord, Rosemary, and Anthony. I said, why don't you guys come down? There was no announcement. There was no grand opening party. My family, I just decided on a whim, you know what? Come down and sit in here. We're open. And within an hour of opening, the place was half full. And within 2 hours, every table was taken. And I was like, oh. And I think it was like people's curiosity to what's this maniac doing in there for 2.5 years? Why is he not open? And when I unveiled it, people flocked. People walking home from work with no intentions of coming here, made a right-hand turn into the restaurant. And the place just filled up, and they loved the pizza. And, these bloggers, like, word spread like wildfire. I didn't have a grasp on it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to handle it. People are now, I'm getting people to come in, like waitresses and someone to man the phone. And I'm like, yeah, take out 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Every time I called for a pizza in any pizzeria, yeah, come now for it, So I was like, yeah, come now for it. Next thing I know, I got a pile of 50 pizzas that I'm supposed to make in an hour. And people are banging, like literally, like it got ugly.
That's hilarious.
I've been waiting an hour for my pizza. You told me 5 minutes. And I had no clue what I was doing. And it was pretty crazy. But then, I learned fast. I didn't have a choice.
Do you have someone now that kind of works beneath you who kind of like does all the day-to-day management?
Nope. I don't even have a manager.
So is it still you running everything?
I mean, the place pretty much runs itself.
Do you ever take a night off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But I enjoy being here.
Yeah. What do you do in your spare time?
It's 7/24, even when you're not here. It's a really, tough business for all restaurateurs. If I want to close for vacation and take like a legitimate vacation where I'm not thinking about what's going on while I'm not there, I want to close. But the guilt, it just eats away at me, and I'm sure most restaurants. And we also have rent to pay, and bills to pay, so it's kind of tough. I very rarely get sick. Getting sick is like another time when you shut down. It's like, I don't care who's calling me for a table and having to respond. And like, it's no lockdown. I'm a bear, like in a den, do not disturb. I shut down to the world when I get sick. I kind of look forward to getting sick sometimes. Buck ups, No, I'll never forget, like, with the incident, when I got into that fight. I'm lying in a hospital bed, and they had to put me in a suite because I was under arrest.
Of course they did.
And there's a flat screen TV, and I got a remote control, and everyone in the restaurant industry is just, like, sending tons of food, and, the cops are there. I'm like, I'm under arrest, so they had, it was 5 days in the hospital. I have a decatheter in me. I'm shackled to a bed, and I can't get up. And I don't have to get up. And, like, I was like a sports junkie. And, like, I was like, here I am watching baseball again. Like I said, more good than harm came out of it. Just not worrying about a thing, not a care in the world other than healing. And I'm eating great, and I'm watching TV, and I'm on painkillers.
And I'm having the time of my life.
Yes. And that sounds crazy.
No, I get it. So when was the last time you actually took some time off? Forget it, but pre-COVID, sorry.
2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
I went to, wasn't vacation. No, so I'm not even going to mention. I was in Mexico, but it was more work than anything.
I love it. I'm not going to mention why I was in Mexico, but yeah, I was in Mexico.
Oh, I was filming a TV show.
Oh, okay, cool.
On food. But prior to that, my daughter, with COVID, all these kids had a rough summer. And she's starting high school. And, I told them, I was like, you know what? Why don't you take her on a quick vacation? Go to Aruba. Aruba's open. You can go there. It's safe. She was like, okay. And when my daughter found out I wasn't going, she was like, Dad, do you realize you and I haven't been on a vacation in 8 years? And I was like, what? She goes, yes, our last vacation together was 8 years ago. And it's not that I'm a bad dad and I don't love spending time with my daughter. I'm just so caught up in this restaurant, and it flew by. And, she went, I bought a ticket, and surprised her, flew down there. And
oh my God, amazing.
Amazing 5 days with her. There's still a lot more I have to do.
London?
Yes. Oh, I was supposed to go to London when I was filming Ugly Delicious episode. I was in Naples, and they were like, all right. I was like, no, don't buy me a return ticket. I was going to travel north. I was going to go to south of France, to Antibes, to see a friend of mine and visit his restaurant. And then I was going to, hit London up, maybe go visit David. and see what London was all about. Again, it's a place that I feel like it's my, through Hollywood and TV, I feel like certain places are my home away from home, and I've never been there. Like, I'll never forget my first time going to LA. I was in California for the first time maybe 3 years ago. And just
Wow.
and being there, I was like, yeah, it felt like my home through Hollywood, you know.
So put it this way, I'm obviously a Londoner through and through, but New York has my heart. New York for me, like if I could move to New York tomorrow, I would go with the clothes on my back.
Really.
So that's why I have a feeling you're going to love London, because there are so many similarities to it.
Yeah, but again, I'm a family guy. My brothers are here, my aunts, my uncles, and they were just such a huge part of my life growing up. Really, really tight knit family. And I'm at a stage in my life right now where I need to be realistic. I already lost a brother, and like my aunts and my uncles, they're at an age right now where they're not going to be around very much longer. I didn't move out of my house until I was like 35. I was still living with my mother because of my grandmother. The home and the values and the food that she
About to
brought
say.
to the table.
I love that. But I also do think that idea of the whole family being in one place together, not leaving home for, longer than other people, it's a big cultural thing as well.
Yeah. I mean, you want to know something, and not even so much a cultural thing. There are a lot of families that I've seen that were torn apart in this neighborhood. My cousins, like, there's like, I think we're up to like 25. Those are first cousins. Then I have all my second cousins and all my nieces and nephews. And we're all so very close. Any more questions?
I mean,
See that one question and look what it led to.
you've kind of covered it all.
I mean, or do you just have to cut it short?
I feel like I've known you for years.
I know, right? That's what I'm saying. This is one of my favorite interviews.
Oh, good. That means a lot. Do you know what's been so lovely as well about this interview is that I keep staring behind you, and I literally feel like I'm back in the restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, my table was on the other side, against the
You
wall.
want me to do a 360 with the camera?
Yes.
Kind of set up a little different right now.
Yeah, that was my table there where that plant is.
You want to hear something crazy?
Yeah.
We've been on the phone for an hour and a half.
I know, I've just realised. And I said to you it was going to be half an hour.
We should have talked more about the knife fight. That would have really kept their attention.
I know, but I know that you don't want to talk about it. It's a pretty wild story.
Yes, it is.
And you're very lucky to be alive.
But it's a long story. I mean, we may have to do another interview.
Don't they do like a sort of after hours one where it's like...
The dark side. Graphic conversation. Oh, okay, listen. For those who don't know me and will be listening to this, you keep saying the incident. Why don't you just explain it to them?
Do I need to explain it? I feel like I'm being tested now. Okay, so the incident that we've been referring to happened in 2011. Am I correct?
Yes. I'm checking your research.
Where a situation happened with another gentleman.
Yes.
I believe...
You don't need to say no names.
I don't know. I don't know his name. There was a conversation that happened that got very tense. I'm not entirely sure if it was to do with money, but I think it was.
No.
Okay.
Not over money. It was not a love triangle.
No, I didn't think it was a love triangle. But it turned very nasty, and
there is assumption on my part, and I really don't know what was. I mean, I can only assume, and how it all started. It was basically me meeting with someone to resolve a business deal, and I was looking out for someone that was very dear to me, and was the reason why. I was stabbed 14 times. It had to do with a business deal that I really wasn't even involved in, but one person didn't have access to the next person, so I guess I was the next best thing. And that person I am no longer. And I know I spoke about how close my family is, but it's kind of crazy. There is one member that I'm now in a huge, and I've never been in a lawsuit with. They basically hijacked my restaurant from me. My / business partner hijacked everything from me. Had nothing to do with opening Lucali, Brooklyn. I made him part of a deal, or he kind of involved himself. Depends on how you want to look at it. in a deal in my second restaurant, and and now I'm fighting in court for that restaurant.
This is the one in Miami.
Yes. So I'm no, not that I'm not involved. It's just my for whatever reasons I need to stay away from the restaurant.
The question
It'll
I
all be in
actually
the
want to
book.
ask, I know, you've left me like a bit of a cliffhanger. With regarding to the actual incident that happened, because it happened on the street, didn't it?
Yes.
Where were you stabbed?
Oh, I was stabbed 14 times.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. I think it was 4 in the head, 2 in the spine, the neck, the arms, the legs, the butt, the bum. Well, how do you say it over there? Bum?
The bum. And how long was your recovery?
I think I'm still recovering. Believe it or not. I was probably back to making pizzas a month later.
A month?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did the doctors know you were going back to work?
Most of the damage, the damage, it was the post damage. Because like I had really severe internal injuries where they had to cut me open to save my life. Healing from that, but I'm good. I'm fine.
I literally don't even know what to say. I mean, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine it.
Like I said, it never affected me. It wasn't to me, it wasn't this horrible incident.
Mm.
I don't know how to explain that. It became a horrible incident for me 2 years later. And it wasn't that it was something that I buried and tried to avoid thinking about. Back to Sunday dinner, everyone's sitting around the table. We were done eating. And, all the guys were we were watching the football games, and all the women were around the table. And it came up. And it was kind of like the first time it really came up. And they started talking about it, and they weren't talking about the actual incident. It was like, where were you when it happened? And I was listening to them. I couldn't help but listening. It was horrific for them. My sister-in-law, like, when she heard the news, she just dropped what she was doing and she ran to the scene. Like, word spread like wildfire with this incident. It was crazy. It was like, there was like 200-300 people at the scene, and mostly everyone that knew me. My brothers were there, my uncles were there, my mother, everyone was there, all my friends. They, like, after, they were there within minutes. It was like a fire alarm went off, and it's a very small, tight-knit neighborhood. And, the incident probably, from beginning to end lasted about 20 minutes to a half hour. But like I said, no one was there until the very end. And having to listen to what they went through and how horrible it was for them, and to see me, like, they were there. I was on the sidewalk. I like, femoral artery was severed, bleeding out of 13 other holes. Like, and I look at some of the pictures and what my brothers were going through. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. They're looking at me lying on the curb with the paramedics and the fire department, and what they were going through. I never realized what everyone else went through. And I went upstairs and I went in the bathroom and I just started crying. Like, I was bawling. Like, I felt so bad. Not for me, for them. And I was like, oh yeah, no, it was no big deal. It was no big deal. But no, it was a big deal for other people. And they were really, really affected by it. Just like, had I seen one of my brothers lying on that sidewalk with all these holes in him, covered in head to toe in blood. I was covered in head to toe. Like, when I got to the hospital, like, third day in, the doctor came to see me. He was like, you're a miracle. Like, you are not supposed to be here. When they brought you into this hospital, you had, like, blood up to your ankles. We gave you 6 liters of blood. Your heart didn't even stop. Which was, you didn't lose. I didn't lose consciousness. Nothing. But now that I think about it, if it was me looking down on one of my brothers, one of my cousins, one of my uncles, lying there, the effect it would have had on me, and that's when it hit me, the effect it had on my family. It never dawned on me, and I cried. Like, I was in there crying, and I couldn't stop. It was this uncontrollable crying. It was crazy.
That was 2 years after the incident.
Yeah, like, I remember my uncle standing over me, telling me, please, lie down, lie down. I wouldn't lie down. I was, like, standing up. He's like, please. And I remember. And then I was down. I was like, I'm getting up. I was like, the fucking idiotic Brooklyn mentality kicked in. I'm not lying on the floor. F that, And he was like, please. My uncle was begging me, Mark, just lie on the floor. Just stay still. Lie on the floor. Wait for the paramedics. And, that all just hit me 2 years later. That's what, really messed me up.
That's really interesting. When you start seeing it from other people's perspective, it's kind of like that delayed reaction.
It never dawned on me. Right. And they spoke about it like 2 years later, Well, not that it wasn't spoken about, but listening to their experience, it just, wow.
Do you find it difficult to talk about it with your family now?
No, actually, it doesn't come up in conversation. Again, because I don't have a problem talking about it. Again, I've told the story hundreds of times over. It's such a wild from beginning to end. And I'm talking about when, walking out of the courthouse, and from my arrest when I was brought to the, to central booking. It's such a crazy story, but it's, again, my family doesn't speak about it. Because again, it was a really traumatizing experience for them, So they don't. I talk about it because, like, again, I guess it was worse if you were on the outside looking in. They saw it. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I experienced it, but
Yeah. If you're living through it, you're not really kind of like looking at it for what it is.
Like, I was stabbed 14 times. Like, I don't think I felt one of it. I didn't know, I really didn't know I was getting stabbed. So it wasn't like this horrible thing to me. It was a fight. Like, I've been in plenty of fights. Growing up in Brooklyn, that's what you do. It was a fight. That's all it was to me. It was a fight. And it wasn't like, as messed up and, I wound up in a hospital. I've been in fights that were a lot worse. Getting punched in the face hurts a lot more than getting stabbed. Well, in this case...
I'll let you know if you're right when both happen to me.
I know that sounds crazy, but in the
I know what you mean.
I didn't feel anything. Are you glad you asked me more questions?
I'm actually... No, I really am. I mean, I'm just trying to get over the fact we've been talking for 2 hours. It's been a real pleasure.
Wait, I think I have somewhere to be. What time is it? All right, do we have to do an exit thing? I really have to go. I have to take my mom to a doctor's appointment.
Oh, shit. Okay, No, I'm just going to literally just say goodbye. I mean, I kind of said goodbye already, so we're just going to do a second goodbye. So I just can't. I'm just laughing at how long we've been talking for. It's amazing. Mark, goodbye again.
Goodbye.
Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure.
You.
And I cannot wait to come and properly meet you. And we can have a proper chat over some pizza and some wine, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Maybe in London. Let's see where either of us head first. Yes. I now have someone to visit in London and show me around.
Exactly. I'm going to be taking you to all the cool places.
Great. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening this week. If you love what you hear, please subscribe and leave a lovely review. And if you can't get enough of me, follow me on Instagram @CrazySexyFood and do visit the Crazy Sexy Food YouTube channel where there are plenty of shows for you to watch. Until next time, bye!